Hello. I think it's time we revisited Keir land, don't you? There's a few interesting things going on and we'll touch on a couple of them. But primarily what I wanted to do was to focus on this book. The book's been out for quite some time now, but there was an interview with two authors a few months ago, and through the lens of time I wanted to get a sense of whether in many ways what they were saying has actually been quite prophetic. And of course I'm also interested in what you think about the clips that we'll play in a little while. And I think it's important to bear in mind just how connected these authors managed to be. They have had unprecedented access to the behind the scenes, and I suspect the in front of the scenes people who surround Keir, who've been helping him. And, well, this may confirm some of your suspicions about what has been going on. Now, we'll get there in due course, but up front, the authors are clear to point out that these are the opinions of some people, and we can all draw our conclusions from the opinions of the people that they've interviewed. But I think they're very interesting opinions. Anyway, we'll get there soon. But before we do that, let us go here to Keir. He's gone quiet. He's running out of energy. What do I mean?
You may have noticed, Mark, because you're very shrewd at this.
Well, you're very kind.
That surprisingly, Starmer did not make a great deal of the $150 billion that Trump brought along as investment from America in this country. That was a colossal deal. It was a huge triumph. Most governments would have been singing from the ramparts.
Yeah.
Instead, it was very quiet. Why was that? Because the head of NVIDIA, one of the companies coming over, said yes, they're going to do this investment with one caveat, which was in order to do all this AI investment, you need the right kind of electricity and a consistent supply. Unfortunately, Mr. Miliband and his crazy ideas that only he is wedded to, it would appear, that means they're not going to get that kind of energy consistency, which means all of this investment is like almost everything Starmer does, pie in the sky.
Yes, that's unfortunate, isn't it? Because it could run to trillions, but only if we had, as you said, the consistent energy supply, and that would either be nuclear and or fossil fuels.
Yes.
It's not going to be windmills, it's not going to be solar.
No, because the wind and solar are not consistent or reliable enough.
And the energy isn't stored.
And the energy isn't stored, and we haven't got the capacity for it. So this wonderful, no wonder even Starmer realised that it was not a good idea to trumpet it because it could be taken apart so quickly, like everything he does.
Ouch. Even Starmer. Gosh, that's cutting. I believe that gentleman's Piers Pottinger, I think, who's a political commentator. Now, that's not all. But have you noticed that Keir has gone quiet about that? I mean, he's not shy about blowing his own trumpet, so to speak. So, what else is happening? Well, let us go here, because I want to talk about this Labour Together playing fast and loose. What do I mean by that? I'm sure you've guessed already.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not at all. Let me ask you first of all about this email scandal on the front page of the Daily Mail, the donations row. We spoke to Kevin Hollingbrake yesterday, who told us that he'd written not only to the Electoral Commission but also to the Parliamentary Standards Authority. He said he thinks there might have been a crime committed here. It's looking more and more like very, very big trouble for Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney, isn't it?
Absolutely, Mike, and this is really serious. So the story so far is that Keir Starmer had this big campaign organisation called Labour Together, which helped get him into power, helped him get the leadership of the Labour Party. It turned out that a lot of the donations they received were never declared. And this was unearthed a little while ago, but what it now turns out, new information has come to light in the past few days that shows they probably deliberately withheld that information from the Electoral Commission. and that's a criminal offence. So the implication is that the Prime Minister's right-hand man broke the law, deliberately broke the law. But also, we've now discovered that the Prime Minister did not declare any of the services that he received from Labour Together to the parliamentary authorities, which is again an incredibly serious breach of protocol. So there are major questions hanging over both of these men this morning, over their judgment. And this is just off the back of the whole Mandelson-Epstein saga, which we were dealing with only about a week ago.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, at the time of recording this, I don't know if there's been any significant updates. You can imagine people will be scrabbling around, however. And certainly based on that conversation, this does sound really serious. What do you think Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks about all of this? Well, let's find out.
Henrik, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, all of them made declarations as to the support they received in their leadership campaigns. They were open and transparent about it. And so Keir Starmer wasn't. He's made no declaration about the money received for Labour Together when it is known that the purpose of Labour Together, we know that McSweeney's aim in Labour Together was to get Starmer to become the leader of the party. Now, why didn't he want to admit the donations? Well, at that point, he was still saying that Jeremy Corbyn was his good friend, something he subsequently denied, one of his many U-turns. He couldn't possibly admit that at the same point as he was serving in the shadow cabinet, he actually had an organisation that was raising money to help him take over from Corbyn. He couldn't admit to that level of disloyalty, possibly even duplicity, as a serving member, a main supporter actually, one of the real props of the Corbyn regime, one of the people who gave the Corbyn regime respectability, was at the same time angling for the leadership. Because it's simply not done.
No, it's simply not done. What do you think about that? Seems like a reasonable theory, doesn't it? A thesis to put forward. Jacob Rees-Mogg always amuses me, and you might say, well, you shouldn't be amused by him, or you should be amused by him. But it's, he's with that elegant insouciance, really putting the boot in, and I think his opinion does need to be heard. I'm glad he made that video, because that is truly fascinating. So let us then move on to, we're going to look at these two guys who have written the book that I have mentioned, Get In. I think you'll find that this is what they're going to say, and this is a snippet from a longer interview with Andrew Marr, is really fascinating. So to begin then, let's listen here.
At which Morgan McSweeney articulates that sort of politics. And I think you're right in that when Morgan McSweeney speaks about his politics, who the Labour Party is for, who it's against, where it's gone wrong, you get a sense of moral and political clarity that can sometimes be lacking from Keir Starmer. Now, and that is one of the central questions of the book. It's the extent to which their politics are the same, or the extent to which Keir Starmer has said, well, you know how to win. I like nothing more than winning. You sort that out. But you're certainly...
Now, it would seem, and again, this is part of a much longer interview, that Morgan McSweeney is very passionate, very articulate, is clear, he lays out the vision, and it's almost as if it's him that we needed. I mean, maybe no, I don't know. Everyone is good and bad. No one is without flaw. And it looks like he's, again, at the time of recording, has done something questionable. But certainly in terms of what sounds like some of the behaviours from a leader, an effective leader, he appears to encapsulate, again, at least some of them. So this disconnect that you may have felt with Keir, the sense that he's not really engaged with it. What does he stand for? Where's he heading, and why? This seems to sort of chime with that. If you've had that feeling, I certainly have. But there's more, because what we want to do now is go on to the other author. And I've posed the question. Keir has no big principled vision, question mark. I've alluded to that already. And I think as we'll hear here, it seems he doesn't, or at least not the way that you and I would think that he should, that could be useful for the country.
But perhaps he does adopt this sort of barrister-like approach of representing the brief he's given in a given moment.
Now, I'm going to stop there, because this is something that I've wondered about as well, his transition from a lawyer and the lawyerly skills to leadership and politics. And you know how many lawyers have got to do their very best job for the individual or individuals who are in front of them. And they do it without, or should do, without fear, favour, and it follows the law. But they may not personally agree with the individual or who they're defending or whatever they're doing. And I have wondered about that, because Keir seems disengaged with certain things. And is it then the part of that training that has ingressed to his office and offices in the political arena have caused him to just say, okay, this is the brief today, this is what I believe today, this is what I think today, and I will fight for it and do my best to make the argument as convincing as possible. And then the next day he changes. That's been on my mind for a long time. It's just really interesting that one of the authors says that. So let's continue.
I think Tom Baldwin would say, all the way through, he sees something that he wants to achieve. He sees a goal, and he just thinks, how do I get to that goal? And he will do anything to get to where he needs to get. Once he's got there, there's another thing to get to. And it's sort of stage by stage by stage, which is kind of the reverse of having a big, vivid, principled vision that you can articulate on television programs or radio.
Yes, big, principled, audacious, exciting, hopeful vision. The opposite of that is what Keir seems to have. So he's never articulated it, because as I've said, I'm not the only person. I just don't think he has it. And so this thing, as Andrew Marr's talking about right, I want that and I want this, and you people help me get there. So I suggested, again, more than once, that Keir is expedient in nature. In other words, to get where I want to get to, I will do this, 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 and this. And if you factor in then this sort of lawyerly approach of, I don't necessarily have to be entrenched or embedded with this belief and value set, because as long as it looks like I am, it gets me to where I want to get to. And what I would add in, and Andrew Marr hasn't said, is that I think it's power. I think this is someone who, when he was younger, had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I think to a degree it's still there, but he's become seduced by the trappings of power and privilege and drunk in the Kool-Aid of the flunkies around him and the legal system saying, wow, you're wonderful. I think he's thought to himself, so I can do anything. Look how everybody hangs on my judgments and opinion. Wow, I could do this for the whole country. But do they agree with what you've been thinking, Keir? Did you check that? You're so convinced in your own intelligence and wisdom that you maybe didn't step outside the little bubble or echo chamber just to check with the people in the street, the population. Remember them? Anyway, let's go on with the video.
Shows or where else?
Yeah, and it also maybe partly explains the power and influence Morgan McSweeney and his acolytes have been given at various stages of this project. Because if you clearly there is immense respect save for the odd private disobliging comment between the two men, because they have a compact, they have a contract that has worked for them both, i.e. Keir Starmer is willing to say to Morgan McSweeney, you do this is where I want to go, you're going to get me there. And in Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney has a leader who is not, as people have said to us about Ed Miliband, ringing you up at midnight saying, have you seen this essay in the New Statesman or whatever, I've found an errant comma in a press release. He's not an Ed Miliband, he's not a Gordon Brown. And whether that's a sign of self-confidence or a sign of detachment, people draw their own conclusions. But it's a unique way. And
yes, what do you think? Confidence or detachment? I think many of us would say detachment. It's a sign of, I'm aiming somewhere else. I'm aiming for these particular staging posts along the way to where I want to get to. And I've also said before, I'm not alone, that I think it's more and more power. It's to mingle with the so-called great and the good, which they aren't, of course, many of them. The world stage, to be an influencer there, to be in that meeting, to be part of that thing that changed history. That's what I think he wants. And he's forgotten, if he ever did remember in the first place, that there is a population. There are these needs and expectations that the ordinary people, so-called ordinary, have. And they've been ignored again and again and again and again.